Hey, it's Chronologically Gaming, the only channel that's perpetually retro because we're playing every video game in order of release. You stumbled upon the Backlog, where we're checking out the video games that we missed the first time around on the live show, just to make sure no game's left behind. We've played every video game from 1971 through 1975. These are the first video games of 1976.
A 500 chassis. 3 IC chips replace about 500 parts. 500 fewer parts to go wrong. And that's why we think Sharp is the best engineered color TV in the world. The Sigma 500 chassis. It makes Sharp the one to watch.
Man, it was tough in 1976. Our very first game is BiPlane in the arcade. The best place to be in 1976. Let's take a look at the advertisement flyer for BiPlane. Now, just like most releases we see in the beginning of the year, this possibly could have been released December 1975, at least some sources say. We're saying the release date is January 15th, 1976. BiPlane is our 168th game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. It's the 129th game released in the arcade, and this advertisement flyer is Fun Games, the fourth time we've seen this company doing titles like Take 5, Take 7, and Tankers. Fun Games is one of the first times that people left Atari and started their own company. That's what it's all about. Look at this advertisement flyer. It looks really close to the Atari advertisement flyer. I mean, even some of the ones we saw in 1974 and 75, I mean, come on, BiPlane looks just like that. You flip it over the back, it has an example of the arcade cabinet and a screenshot, and look at the screenshot. That's actually not what the biplanes look like. They blew them up or they fabricated them because I think it's not the accurate picture of what you see when you play the game. We have air alert, heavy action, behind the line support. Thanks, Fun Games. Here's an ad you would have seen from magazines or catalog at the time. Fun Games is here to stay forever until it isn't, because, you know, it's going to go away after a while. Alberto Alvarez is the president and Patrick S. Carnes, director of marketing. And I don't know all the details, but I'd love to know which one are the people that left Atari to start Fun Games. Maybe it was them, but I'm not certain. There's the example of the arcade cabinet for BiPlane. It's a 2-player game, and each player is going to be holding 2 joysticks. Look at the bezel on the outside and the arcade marquee. It just really feels like this is an Atari title, and it was the same when we saw Tankers in the arcade. There's the arcade marquee for BiPlane. Yeah, it really pops. You would want to play this right now in the arcade just by looking at it. There's the example of what we saw as the fabrication of the game and the other screenshot. So for this one, all I have is some video footage of what BiPlane is like, taken from online. BiPlane is a 2-player competitive-only game. You have to have another person to play with. Each player controls a biplane and tries to shoot down their opponent. The player who shoots down their opponent the most wins a fixed time period is the winner. So it's another time constraint game. At the start of each game, each player's biplane, one white and one black, starts in one of the corners at the bottom of the screen, facing toward the center. They then need to take off before reaching the small dividing wall at the bottom of the screen. Once airborne, they can shoot small missiles at their opponent. These missiles will travel in a straight line, but only a fraction of the screen width before exploding, and only one per player can be fired at a time. When they will be hit by anti-aircraft fire, which is displayed as the wall of small sparkling explosions, which essentially is the overlay. So the overlay can kill you. If a player is hit, either by crashing into the ground, wall, anti-aircraft fire, or by an opponent's missile, then their opponent's score is incremented, and they're returned to their corner of the screen to try again. There's a warning that the game is about to end when the score starts to flash, so get those points in before it's all over. We call these multi-directional shooters on Chronologically Gaming. It's the 8th multi-directional shooter we've seen. It's the 13th dual shooter, one-on-one against someone else. And it's the 22nd game we've seen with a time constraint. The overlay over the top isn't new. This is the 51st game that has an overlay over the screen, the 24th that we've seen in the arcade so far. The control, though, is dual joysticks, and these are 2 vertical joysticks. The 7th time we've seen dual joysticks on the show, and the vertical joysticks is like we've seen from Tank, Tank 2, or Tankers. Other dual joystick games we've seen so far have been Robot, Western Gun, and Gunfight. It's using relative control, so whenever you play this game, depending on the position of that biplane is where you'll turn everything. It's the 17th relative direct control video game we've seen so far. It's also on a side view, the 24th game from this perspective. It's the 4th video game using stereo sound up to this point, and it's only the 12th video game that has a theme of war or warfare. It's the 7th time we've seen a video game where you get to fly a plane. Only 7 video games that are out there right now. It's the another video game without a microprocessor microprocessor, discrete logic, DTL, or TTL, the 158th game with no microprocessor. And this marks the 133rd game we've seen released first in North America. So of all the titles you could have played in the arcade so far, sadly we don't get to play this one ourselves. Since it has no microprocessor, we have to enjoy the footage and give it a no rating. There's a lot of games that you cannot play unless you find them in the arcades. This just happens to be another one. All right, let's press forward to see our next video game. Now we're talking. Let's go to the arcade and see what Stunt Cycle is all about. We've already seen Stunt Cycle on Chronologically Gaming, but now let's do something a little different. Stunt Cycle is the 169th game that we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. Here's the advertisement flyer. This one is by Atari, and whoa, look at that. Same way they advertise, see below the wheel, the exact same way that BiPlane is. Fun games and Atari, head to head. This is the 25th game we've seen by Atari on Chronologically Gaming and the 24th that they've released in the arcades. Stunt Cycle has a lot of new features, a lot of things we haven't seen before. The advertisement flyer is very well done, and man oh man, it's a new concept too. It's daredevil thrills, high rev profits, a large 19-inch monitor. Stunt Cycle won't wipe out. And that's a really accurate depiction of what the screen looks like whenever you're playing Stunt Cycle. There's the example of the arcade cabinet, and your first thought is, what's the control? Because it looks like handlebars. Are you going to be driving and turning the handlebars? No, the handlebars are actually just the way to rev your engines or your brake to slow down. So you're just twisting those handlebars for your control. There's another example of the arcade cabinet. Very, very nice. The artwork all around the outside is amazing. Love to see this one in the arcades. There's the arcade PCB, and there's the control. Rev the engine or the brake to make the motorcycle go faster or slower. There's the arcade marquee. 1 or 2 can play, accelerate, twist the hand throttle. 1 bus added for each successful jump. Very nicely done. I love it. And there's the example of the screenshot for the game. So for this one, when we get a chance to play Stunt Cycle, there won't be any sound. So I included this video online, and all the videos that you see on Chronologically Gaming will be in links down below. So if you want to see the person's channel and check them out and see their video, go for it. Stunt Cycle is a 1-player or 2-player alternating arcade game by Atari, originally released right now in 1976. It attempted to cash in on the Evel Knievel craze of the mid-70s, allowing the player to perform their own simulated motorcycle jumping stunts. The game is housed in a custom cabinet that includes a simulated motorcycle steering column mounted to the control panel. The screen is divided into 3 horizontal platforms connected by tubes on the monitor overlay. The motorcycle automatically drives across each platform in sequence, left to right to left, and then left to right again. The bottommost part has a line of parked buses between 2 ramps, and the goal is to successfully jump the buses and land safely before repeating the process again. Stunt Cycle is a hot seat multiplayer arcade game. If you want to play with other people, you got to take turns. But there is a single player mode. If you want to just play and drive the motorcycle, go for it. This is the second time we've seen any video game with a split screen look to it. So the Stunt Cycle screen doesn't necessarily allow multiple people to use the split screen, but the only other game that comes close to a split screen look is Steepletrace that we've already seen. Stunt Cycle is the 15th racing or driving game we've seen up to this point, and it is the very first stunt racing video game. It is the very first video game involving any tricks or stunts as well. It is also the very first video game we've seen where you're controlling a motorcycle. This is the first motorcycle-driven or controlled video game. It's the 25th game we've seen from a side view, and it's the second racing game we've seen after Steeplechase. So the difficulty options that are available to play in the game or allow you to change it, increase the number of buses or decrease the number of buses. When you do play the game, every time you make a successful jump, it adds to it. This is the 5th game that allows you to have options or difficulty settings changed after a balloon gun, flim flam, bullet mark, and shark. The control, though, is so unique. It's the very first video game that's using a throttle or anything that's involving, you're revving an engine, but that's the only control. You don't have any direct control on moving the car like we've seen with other racing games. Now, we got got a little thing special. So this video footage right here, I had to turn the sound off because the person that did the video did a great job, and you can hear the sound of the car or what the motorcycle is on the game, and that's the best way to get the sounds of the game. All right, so besides this though, we can play the game ourselves. But first, here's the manual for Stunt Cycle. And I don't remember on the live show if we showcase this or not. Atari always does a great job with their manuals. Let's see what they had to say about Stunt Cycle in the arcade. All the technical information we're going to skip by. If you want to read, you can read that yourselves. But they call Stunt Cycle a motorcycle video action game designed to its own distinct styled upright cabinet, rests directly on the floor. And it says the controls are located on a horizontal flat panel beneath the TV monitor. The controls consist of 1-player start, 2-player start buttons, and then in Stunt Cycle, a player tries to jump as many buses as possible. Each successful jump increases the row by 1 bus. After an operator receives a free game and continues jumping as long as no more than a preset number of crashes occur. There is no game timer. Oh, see? Interesting. They advertise it as this doesn't have a game timer like all those other games. So it's not a time constraint game. It's how long can you last? How many buses can you jump? Yeah, preset number of attempts. The player has to rev up the proper speed by the time he or she's taken off the ramp. Too slow a speed will cause the stunt cyclist to descend too early and crash. Too fast a speed will cause them to crash too. So you have to make sure you do it right, and you'll see your motorcycle go up or down. Regardless of the number of buses to be jumped, the game always has the same degree of difficulty. It adds 1 bus every single time. So anyway, interesting information or hearing from how they would describe the game. But why describe it when now we can play it ourselves? Let's boot up the DICE emulator and check out Stunt Cycle, released in January 28th, 1976 by Atari. All right, so before we begin this, just so you know, there's a bezel around the outside that allows us to play, but all I'm doing is revving the gas and then revving the brake. All right, ready? Let's put a coin in. And after we put a coin in, we'll push start, and then we go. Now look how the motorcycle moves as I'm doing. I'm revving a little, and make sure I get enough, make the jump, very nice. Cool, so the control is pretty simple, but it takes a while to get used to. Oh, watch it, make sure I don't do too much. There we go, good. But all I'm doing is, how much gas am I giving it, how much brake am I giving it, and that's it. That's all you do for the game. This side view driving from one side to the other, even on the live show, we're currently in December 1982, we haven't really seen any game trying to do this. There's been some copycats, I think, on home consoles, but this is still very, very unique. So a really cool idea. Oh gosh. And that's what the crash looks like whenever you don't make the jump. You really need to time it. So making your acceleration, get the right rev. What it doesn't allow you to do is you don't really have any control over the landing. So whenever you rev it up, it depends on how much gas you're giving it. All right, we're looking pretty good, though. In the top of the screen, it's showing the number of buses. So right now we have 14 to jump. Here we go. Get a little faster. Go, go, go. Nice. And you just keep on going. I think maximum number of buses gets in the 20s if you're good enough. Look how long that is. See? And if you don't do it the right way, then you crash. All right, but there you go. That's just a taste of what your first experience would be like with Stunt Cycle. I love it. So there you go. Thanks for playing Stunt Cycle. That is a lot of fun. Of all the games you could play in the arcade right now, you would really enjoy this. Be sure to check out Blind Dog 44. That's who's providing the video of the actual arcade cabinet where you can hear the game and see some more information on it. For the games that we've seen to this point in the arcades, I would still say this is incredible. This is so fun. The control is easy to understand, but it's something new and different. So in a way, I could say it's one of the best video games we've seen in the arcade up to this point, but I won't be that kind, but it is pretty special. So I'll still say 4 stars for Stunt Cycle. Everything you could play in the arcades right now. All right, after Stunt Cycle, let's see what's next. Coming up next, it's Road Race in the arcade. Released at some time in February 1976. Let's check it out together. Here's the artwork for Road Race. Here's one for the road. It's Sega's hot new driving game, Road Race. Not to be confused with Road Race that's on Mainframe, which is a racing text game. This one is not that game. This is our 170th game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. The 131st game released in the arcades, and this one is by Sega. The 8th time we've seen this company doing games like Pongtron 1 and 2, Hockey TV, Clean Sweep, Balloon Gun, Goal Kick, and Bullet Mark. Now, Sega did a lot of electromechanical games way before video games. We are just playing the video games of Sega, and this one is their latest and greatest. Here's another example of the advertisement flyer for Sega's Road Race. Very, very cool. Now, the racing game doesn't include a sit-down cabinet. One of the only ones we've seen so far has been Highway that Atari did, but I like how these racing games that are still upright cabinets have a chair that you sit, or this one looks more like a stool, like if you're sitting at a bar, which is kind of cool. All right, so the really cool thing I want to point out is when you flip over this advertisement flyer, this is the very first video game that's using the classic Sega logo. So in the beginning, when they were service games, it was more of like a cursive logo, and then they went for this one. That's the Sega logo we've been seeing from 1973 until now. And so now in 1976, this is the very first time we've seen that Sega logo. This is the game that started it, or at least the first one that we've seen. It's a single-player 23-inch TV driving game, constantly changing S-shaped road course, it says on here. And it's got special features. Operator can slide to adjust the driver's obstacle cars, making the game easier and more difficult. And in fact, Road Race has lots of different options if you wanted to. And they end up changing this game and making it into a new game later. And we'll check that out as well. This is just the very first time we've seen it. There's the example of the arcade cabinet for Road Race. We have the shifter high and low on the left side with the steering wheel. And we got the gas pedal down at the bottom. It's got an overlay again, and it has a little bezel around the outside too. Artwork looks awesome. There's the arcade marquee, Sega Road Race. Sega is in the arcades, and this is one of the catalogs that Sega brought out a little bit later, so we're going to see some other titles, but when you flip to the right page, you can see we have Rock and Bark, which we've alluded to. It was the an alternate name for a game we've already seen. And there it is down on the bottom left, Sega Road Race. Oh, and there's also Sega Tracer, which is another one. It's a light gun shooting game with Bullet Mark. Very cool. All right, so this one I have more video game footage of Road Race. Now, this one is single player only. You can only play this by yourself. Players are going to be driving, constantly changing S-shaped track, trying to avoid the two other cars on the course or skidding off the track. The speed of the car is controlled by the foot-operated accelerator and a hand-operated high-low gear shifter. The player's score depends on how fast along they're driving the course. This was the first game that uses the modern blue Sega logo that appears in the Japanese arcade flyer. It's also the first video game with a pseudo 3D third-person perspective. Now, this is the very first time we've seen any game attempting this view. We've seen games that are the top-down 2D scrolling racing games. That's one of the first times we ever saw scrolling. This is the first time attempting a behind view, like a 3D view. And even they're not really sprites, but the car that you're seeing is actually growing and changing in size, at least the ones from the back. It's like an alpha version of sprite scaling, way before it's even possible. But this is the origins of Sega right here. It's going to be used later where they're going to adapt this game, because you can modify this game lots of different ways. If you want to go inside and mess with this, you can. They provided a lot. And one of the things they did is they changed this into a game called Motocross. We're actually going to see it later. And Motocross is going to get turned into Man TT and eventually the Fonz, the arcade game. This is the very first one we have ever seen. This marks the 16th racing or driving game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. It's the 23rd game that's utilizing a time constraint. It's the 11th video game that's controlled with steering wheel and pedals, and the 9th game we've seen with a shifter, even though it's just high and low. The very first time we've seen a game with this perspective, it is taking the screen and flipping it into a portrait view or instead of a landscape view. The monitor is sideways. It's the 9th video game we've seen with this screen. It's the second video game that's a variant of Speed Race, very loosely. Speed Race, is just the top-down scrolling, but the only other one we've seen was Street Burners. This one's special, though. This one's doing something that we haven't seen before. It's awesome. This is the 13th video game we've seen that you're controlling an automobile. It's the very first chase view scrolling video game. It's the 53rd game with an overlay and the 26th video game with an overlay we've seen in the arcade so far. It has no microprocessor. It's the 160th video game using DTL or TTL. And it's the 20th video game that was released in Japan first. Now, we can't rate it. We can't play it as much as I would love to, so we have to give this one a no rating. So many cool games that I just want to be able to play myself. All right, let's see what our next game is. We're going to be in the arcades even longer. Our next game is Ace. Let's check out Ace. We've already seen this one on Chronologically Gaming, and now let's give it a fresh coat of paint. This one is our 171st game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming, and the 132nd released in the arcades. It's by Allied Leisure Industries, the 12th time we've seen this company after Robot, Football, Street Burners, Ski, Firepower, and F-114. Allied Leisure's Ace. And we've already seen this advertisement, I believe, before. There's the example of the arcade cabinet. Similar control scheme. We're seeing lots of dual joysticks, way more than you'd think, right? Yeah, the control is just you move around with the one joystick and fire, and we'll go into the details of how to play. There's the example of the arcade marquee for Ace. Allied Leisure Industries is another very worthy competitor to Atari right now. When you look in the grand scheme of things, right now it's hard to tell which one of the companies is the top of the top. There's the example of the screenshot. So for this one, we can actually just play some Ace. Are you ready? Let's go to the arcade and play some Ace. I want to show a few more things that we didn't get to do the last time around on the live show. Allied Leisure's Ace is a two-player simultaneous biplane dogfight game. The goal is to shoot down the other player, avoiding his shots. Each hit is counted on a scoreboard at the bottom of the playfield. Whoever has the most points at the end of the time-based round wins. The blue gel overlay is applied to the back of the bezel rather than the monitor itself. So the blue you're seeing here is really the overlay. It's a black and white game. Player 1 stands on the left side of controls and maneuvers the black plane. Player 2 stands at the right side of the controls and maneuvers a white plane. The goal is to shoot the other player while dodging their shots and the side barriers. If your plane is destroyed, you become a paratrooper that falls to the ground. And you can't control them, sadly. As soon as the paratrooper reaches a solid object, your plane is respawned on the ground on the side of the screen. Each game is time-based. Whoever gets the most points in the time limit wins. All right, you ready? Let's put a coin in. And go. So this is another game that we can't have with sound. So as I'm playing this, there is sound associated with the game, but we just don't have it. If this looks familiar, I'm pretty much playing the game that I described at the beginning of 1976. This is a ripoff of BiPlane, or it's possible that Atari was working on Ace, Allied Leisure Industries was working on Ace, and then Fun Games ripped it off. But there's plenty of flying games that we've seen so far in 1976. The first thing that strikes me is the controls. So this is done with dual joysticks. It's the 8th video game controlled with dual joysticks. It's a vertical joystick and a horizontal joystick. The vertical joystick increases your speed or slows you down. The other joystick turns you left and right, and that's where your fire button is. So you can actually swivel, left and right, and then you can use the button on your joystick to fire. Now, I want to get the other plane over here so you can see a little bit more of how it works. So let's fly him up here. The one thing to notice is the screen doesn't wrap like we've seen with space shooters. When you go to the edge of the screen, look at that, I'm dead. And when you go to the top of the screen, you're dead. There is no screen wrapping. You have to avoid the edges of the screen. Very interesting and different when you think of the other games we've seen that are multi-directional shooters. But whenever you do fire a shot, I did a kamikaze that time. One thing that I noticed too is when you're playing the game and you're shooting, you have the ability to hold the button down, and it does almost like an auto fire, but it doesn't explode. The other thing too is you can tap the button really fast and have short shots. But you want to get the shot to explode in that burst. That explode is where it's going to be, where you're going to be able to blow up your opponent. Ready? Watch this. We'll go to the side and then blow them up. And if you do turn into a paratrooper, you have no control over yourself. You just float to the bottom and that's it. You do have to have someone else to play with. So while I'm showcasing this game, there's no one that's in control of the other plane. I'm doing both, or trying to do both. There is no computer to play against. But I found that the control was different than what I first thought, and it also is not allowing me to wrap around the screen. This marks the 9th multi-directional shooter we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. It's also the 14th dual shooter. It's a dual stick, as in 2 sticks, but it's a dual shooter, as in we're doing a duel, one-on-one with another player. It's the 24th game that includes a time constraint. So after the time's up, it's about to run out while I'm showcasing the game. It's the 54th game that has an overlay, the 27th that we've seen in the arcades. And it is the very first time we've seen this style of joysticks. One vertical, one horizontal. There was 2 vertical joysticks with Tank and Tank 2, and then Robot had dual joysticks, but not like this. Western Gun and Gunfight also have 2 joysticks, but again, it's not controlled exactly like this is. And then Tankers was pretty much like a ripoff of Tank. This one's the 18th video game that's using relative control. And to explain relative control, the best way is look at the plane on the screen. When the plane's going up, if I go left, the plane goes left. But if I'm going down and I move left on the joystick, the plane's going right because it's relative to the position of the object or the plane and where it's going. The 18th video game we've seen with that control. This is the 26th video game that has a side view perspective. The sound on this one is also different than BiPlane. BiPlane apparently had stereo sound. This one's using mono, which we've seen on plenty of arcade cabinets. 1-channel mono. Oh, it didn't blow up the plane. I guess I got to get him to fly first. There we go. Get going. This is the 13th video game with a war theme. And just like BiPlane, it's the 3rd video game with a World War I theme because we're flying around with biplanes. Only other game that does that kind of theme is Pursuit and BiPlane. It's also the 8th video game where you get to fly a plane or involving aviation. It's the 135th game, released first in North America. And having played it, I'm going to say our rating still stands from when we played this on the live show. It's another video game without a microprocessor, the 161st game with discrete logic. And I'd say it's still 3 stars, an average game for all the games you could play in the arcade up to this point. All right, after that, let's see what our next video game is. We're going to continue in the arcades with another big one. Our next video game is Seawolf. We have seen this one as well on the live show. Let's see some more about Seawolf and maybe even play a little bit more. Seawolf is our 172nd game on Chronologically Gaming. The 133rd released in the arcades. This one's done by Dave Nutting Associates, the second time we've seen this company after Gunfight. Before that, they were Nutting Associates, and we saw about 5 games for them. The advertisement flyer we have already seen, and it's still very well done. Seawolf is based on a game which is based on another game, and we'll get into the details in a sec. Look down at the bottom, you can see it's by Midway. This is the 10th time we've seen a video game that Midway's been a part of. Before this, Midway's done lots of electromechanical games. At this point, we've seen games like Winner, Leader, Playtime, TV Basketball, Wheels, Baseball, Wheels 2, things like that. This game's going to be released later by Taito. The 16th time we've seen Taito or heard about Taito on the show. You flip this over, you can see it's the German advertisement flyer. Read it and sprechen Sie Deutsch. Then we have the arcade cabinet, a modified custom cabinet, a modified custom control. I love 1976 already because they are trying something new. We got more innovation. Have you noticed there's no Pong yet? I'm very excited about that. There's another example of the arcade cabinet. Well done. Artwork is amazing. And it's kind of a tried and true formula. So they already know that this is going to work. And this was one of the most popular games in 1976. Yeah, the arcade cabinet is fantastic. And if you get a chance to play it yourself, it's very different when you can actually look through the periscope to play. That's the best experience. There's the example of the arcade PCB, and there's a zoom in of the control. It's a periscope. The control is an analog joystick, essentially. We're moving left and right, or twisting the periscope and then firing off torpedoes. But you're supposed to be looking through the viewport to get a cool view. And then we have the arcade marquee for Midway's Seawolf. Released first in North America and then later in Japan by Taito. There's some examples of the screenshot. And we do have a manual. I don't think I showed the correct one last time we played on the live show. But the manual is essentially just showing off the microprocessor because this is one of the very first video games that has a microprocessor. Not that it's the very first we've seen, but they end up breaking down the 8080 microprocessor that's inside of it. Oh yeah. Do we have anything about Seawolf though? Oh, it's talking about why would you want to use a microprocessor? Discrete logic has been tried and true. And then it tells us about the attract mode. Oh, nice. Got screenshots of the game too. That's awesome. After a coin's deposited, the computer enters the play mode. At this point, all the displays are changed and the sonar sound commences. The game timer counter is displayed in the lower portion of the CRT and begins to count down. That's right. It's another time game. The words zap and wham appear when things are exploded on the screen, and the game continues in this fashion until the game timer reaches 0. Nice. So this one is one of the first times we're seeing video games that switch up what you're seeing into different. What's the best way to describe it? They call it. They're calling it attract mode in the manual, but there's also not just the attract mode. You're going to have different scenes or different plays of the game, or different modes, basically. Not game modes like from a gamer perspective, but from an operator perspective. You have the attract mode. You also have the play mode. Sometimes you'll have the high score table mode, and then there'll also be like a demonstration mode aside from that. So this is one of the first video games, and we're going to see more that add more and more modes for the operators to see. We won't go through a lot of the detail, but you can see here, this is a lot of information. It's a very sophisticated arcade cabinet. And as usual, when we look at arcade manuals, we're not taking a look at the details of the electromechanical and the parts or the hardware side. We're more focused on the video game side of everything. As always, if you want to, go online and get a manual yourself and peruse through it, because there's so much information that you can find if you want to dive into the more technical side. All right, let's go to the arcade and play Seawolf. This is by Thomas McHugh, Dave Nutting, and Jay Fenton, by Midway and later Taito in the beginning of March 1976. So we kind of already seen this before. You are the commander. Seawolf puts you in charge of sinking and destroying all enemy ships. You're armed with 4 torpedoes, which will reload after you fire. Your primary targets are the small PT boats, which travel quickly through the water. You can choose the length of your playing time. Game times vary from 1 to 9 minutes in 1-minute intervals. Seawolf was a video game update of an earlier coin-operated electromechanical game that Midway did called Sea Devil. But Sea Devil is based on Sega's 1966 coin-op electromechanical arcade game that's a submarine simulator called Periscope. So you could say Periscope is the grandfather of all this, but since we're only seeing video games, that's why we're checking out Seawolf. This one's a single-player only game. They could have given it, I guess, hot seat multiplayer in the arcade to have more people, but it's better just to have a one-player game. All right, ready, set, put a coin in. There's the sonar starts. So cool. So the emulator I'm playing on is MAME, and MAME has a little crosshair to show you where your periscope would be pointing. In the arcade, though, you would just have to turn. You wouldn't see this crosshair. And then fire off the torpedoes. If you look in the top right, the display is showing you how many torpedoes you have. That display is using electromechanical inputs. So it's not part of the game. The only part of the game you see is the overlay. It's like making it blue over the top. Can you get that one? I didn't think so. Oh, that was a close one. I think he's going too fast. You can only fire a couple at a time. I guess you can do all 4 at a time. But the sounds and the explosions are awesome. And the fact that you're having to look through a periscope to play this is a lot of fun. All right, so no torpedoes. Got to wait for the reload sequence and then keep on going. Oh, love it. So this one is essentially a shooting gallery game. We call these arcade shooting gallery games. This is the 6th video game we've seen in this genre. The very first we saw was Submarine on the Magnavox Odyssey. And then Attack UFO is another example, or Anti-Aircraft. This is the beginning of the shooting gallery morphing into a shoot 'em up. I still consider this a shooting gallery game. Shooting gallery games have been around way before video games, and they incorporated them here, and you can see how this is going to turn into, let's add more elements on the screen. And after we add more elements, then let's start scrolling the screen with a star field. And that's where it's going to begin the morph. But you're seeing it here now. This is the beginning of let's turn this into a shoot 'em up. This is also a vehicular combat game. It's the 8th we've seen so far since we're in control of a submarine. Tank and Tank 2 are vehicular combat games, Crash and Score or Destruction Derby. This is the 2nd naval combat game we've seen that's a vehicular combat game after PT-109. But the first variant of Seawolf is right here. And we're going to see lots of people copying. Developers are going to want to copy this style of game. It's the most popular game until we get some invaders that start invading the arcades in 1978. But that's a long way from now. It's 1976. No problem. Let's see if we can get the small sub. Oh, man. Oh, I got the one in the back, though. That's nice. This one is the 55th game that is having an overlay assist the graphics. The 28th that we've seen in the arcades, the 25th game that's using a time constraint, so it's another video game that is not using the classic arcade gameplay loop. The time constraint video game is more what we're seeing rather than the arcade loop. It's the 27th video game that's from a side view, and the other thing that to note is when we go to the end, it's showing at the bottom of the screen right now my time, and it's showing the score. When we end our time, let's watch it count down. We'll keep going. I love 1976 already. There's so many games that are giving us something new. Almost every game so far I've said, this is the first for this, and this is the first for this. But now, look down in the bottom left. This is the very first video game that's using the term high score. And I'm going to mark this down. This is the first. While it doesn't have a high score table and you're not putting your initials in, it's saving the high score, and it's going to be displayed on the title screen. So right now, if this was the arcade, someone would say, oh, look, that's the high score. So the other thing I'd like to do is show you the another view to zoom this in, because it's a little farther out. Let's zoom in and see a little bit more. That's a little bit better. You can kind of see the reload too at the top. But now you can kind of understand a little bit more of what it looks like to play. Or what the graphics look like. I don't think I did that one on the live show. Oh, I gotta wait for a reload. Now we got 4 shots. This view doesn't have the same explosion for the subs, though. It's cheaper. Yeah, not utilizing the same way that it would have done explosions. This marks the 14th video game that we've seen with a war theme. It's the 5th video game in an aquatic or underwater setting. And the 2nd video game that's involving a submarine. Only the 2nd, after Magnavox Odyssey's Submarine. Which I find amazing. But in a way, you're not controlling the whole sub. You're just inside the sub shooting off torpedoes. This one has a microprocessor. Of all the games we've seen that are using discrete logic, we have a microprocessor. This is the future of what games would look like. So there you go. That's Seawolf, the 136th game released first in North America. And I say the rating still holds. This is excellent. Seawolf is 4 stars. Maybe we could go a little bit higher, but I'll keep it the same. It's an excellent video game. You know what? Let's go and give it a higher rating. Let's re-rate Seawolf, because after we've seen everything up to this point, it's understandable with the high score and with the different control scheme. I'm going to go 4.5 for Seawolf. I'll say one of the best games you could see and play in the arcades right now. So much fun. All right, after that, what's our next game? It's more in the arcade. Our next video game is Interceptor. Let's check it out. Here's the advertisement flyer for Interceptor. This has a lot of stuff with it too. This is released at some time in March 1976. Interceptor is our 173rd video game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. It's the 134th released in the arcades, and this one, take a look at that. This is by Taito, the 17th time we've seen any game associated with this company. And this one is done by Tomohiro Nishikado. We've seen games like Basketball, Balloon Gun, Speed Race DX, Speed Race Twin, and Western Gun, all from Taito. Those are the big ones. Interceptor is going to be another really, really fun one. You flip over the Japanese advertisement flyer, and they just explain a little bit about the game. This was the English translation for it. Shows the features, how to play, insert the coin enemy aircraft, appear in formations of 2, pursue the enemy aircraft using crosshairs and fire. A crosshair, that's pretty rare too. Besides the advertisement flyer, there's the example of the arcade cabinet. Nice joystick. It's kind of a bad picture, but you can tell that they're trying to do something different. Inside of the catalog for Taito, we have a few games that we're going to see later, but there it is at the top middle, Taito's Interceptor, and there's Speed Race DX. Blue Shark we haven't seen just yet. Same thing with Space Wars, and then, oh, is that Super? Yeah. So this is a much later catalog. And then there's the example of the screenshot for Interceptor. So for this one, Interceptor, I was able to find footage because someone posted the History of Video Games Volume 1, Taito Corporation, and that's where we're getting to see this. This is one of the very few rare footage of Interceptor, and I wish they did something like this with Atari so we could see the other game that this comes close to. Interceptor is a jet fighting game. The player controls a jet fighter from a first-person perspective. Enemy aircraft fly around and must be shot down. The pitch and yaw of the aircraft is adjusted with an 8-way joystick. Enemies fly in formation and will try to evade the player's fire. The size of their craft scales based on distance to the player. Another video game with like alpha sprite scaling, way before it's real sprite scaling. This one is a single-player only game. It's the 9th vehicular combat game we've seen, after Tank, Tank 2, Crash and Score, Destruction Derby, Seawolf, and then another one that I want to bring up. This is the 2nd flight combat game that we've seen so far. Not an actual flight simulation, but pretty close to a flight simulation, and that was Pursuit by Atari. That's the video I'd like to see. I wasn't able to find any footage of Pursuit by Atari. It's pretty rare. This is the 26th video game using, yet again, a time constraint, no arcade gameplay loop. It's the 56th game that's using an overlay. What you see on the screen, or at least the crosshair and all that, oh, that's the overlay. Is the 29th video game we've seen in the arcade so far, and it's the 30th video game using a digital joystick. An 8-way joystick is a little more rare, but to have that fine-tuned control is awesome. It's the 9th video game we've seen from a first-person perspective. It's the 15th game using a war theme, and it's the 9th video game where you get to fly a plane or use any kind of plane or aviation. This one has no microprocessor inside. It's the 162nd game using discrete logic, and because of where we are, it's originated in Japan. It's the 21st video game that we've seen starting in Japan. Wow. So many video games. Love to play it too, but since we didn't get to play it ourselves, we give it a no rating. But we're not done. 1976 has a lot more games. Let's see what our next game is. Oh, another really special one. Our next game is Outlaw. Let's see what Outlaw is all about, starting with the advertisement flyer. Oh, yeah, look at that. Love it. Outlaw was released at some time in March 1976. It's our 174th game we've seen, and the 135th released in the arcades. This is Atari, the 26th time we've seen this company and their 25th arcade game. Outlaw is a single-player arcade game that simulates an Old West fast-draw duel between the player and the computer. There's the gun in the holster, and even the advertisement flyer shows what you're supposed to be doing, or pretending like you're the outlaw. I love it. You flip it over in the back, it says Outlaw is a new concept in video entertainment. It invites the player for the first time to physically match their skill against a video gunfighter in one of America's most traditional contests, the Fast Draw Shootout. It has Top Gun realism, hair trigger features, and dimensions. There's the example of the arcade cabinet. The holster, it has a sensor inside, not just the light gun part, but it has a sensor to know when it's in the holster and when you take it out. And so if you draw too slow or too fast, you get penalized, and you have to do it at the right time. It has one giant button on the left side to begin the game. There's the example of the arcade marquee for Outlaw. And an example of the screenshot, really hard to find information for. Look at these screenshots. But thankfully, we have someone who posted information online. Let's check it out. Yes, this is a great video. This is done by 74XX Arcade Repair, and I'm going to include links down below. Be sure to check out their channel and see this video if you want more information on Outlaw. This is the best video about Outlaw, basically. Outlaw is where players select between two different characters, Half-Fast Pete or Billy the Kid. Pete is more accurate than Billy and can draw faster. An outlaw appears somewhere in the town, and the object is being to draw your gun as soon as he draws his. Shooting him before he shoots you scores points, with points counting toward the end of the game, ratings such as Dude, Greenhorn, and Top Gun, which I believe that's the first time in a video game it's referencing Top Gun, or the words Top Gun. This is a single-player only game. You have to play by yourself. And it is a light gun shooting gallery game, and it's using a light gun. It's the 10th video game we've seen that's a light gun game, because every light gun game we've seen has been a shooting gallery game like this one. There's been 4 that we saw on the Magnavox Odyssey, and this one's the 5th light gun game in the arcades, after games like Laser Clay Shooting System by Atari, Balloon Gun and Bullet Mark by Sega, Quack by Atari, and Wild Gunman by Nintendo, which I would say this more associates with or is closer to. Apparently, Atari released this to combat with Gunfight that Midway released, but this really can't be compared to Gunfight because it's, a first-person shooter, a quick-draw game. It's more something like Wild Gunman that Nintendo did because that was in Japan, so I guess it wasn't really a competition. This one's the 57th game that is assisted with overlay. It's the 30th game in the arcades that has an overlay to help the graphics. Someone needs to beef up these processors and make these games more impressive graphically because overlays are starting to become the norm when it comes to arcade games. This is the 10th first-person perspective video game we've seen on Chronologically Gaming. It's the 5th game we've seen that's taking place in the Old West or a Western game after games like Shootout on the Magnavox Odyssey, Gunfight by Nintendo, or Western Gun by Taito, or Gunfight by Midway. This one is using discrete logic. It's the 163rd game using DTL or TTL that we've seen, and it released first in North America, the 137th game from North America. USA, USA. So that's Outlaw. I would love to play it myself, but since we don't play the games, we don't rate the games, so we have to give this one a no rating. All right, now we got to put our video game playing on pause. Thanks for joining me here on the Backlog in 1976. We're going to keep going every single video game in order of release and see what happens. We are still on the lookout for that classic arcade gameplay loop video game. Now, there are some that we saw that were similar to Pinball. Pinball had that feel. Let's keep playing and going for the high score. But see, the thing is, Pinball usually has one screen that stays there. It usually doesn't go to a different screen and then loop into something else. Most of the video games we've seen are static or fixed on one screen, or they scroll. So we're still on the lookout for whatever that is. Well, next time on the Chronologically Gaming Backlog, classic arcade games from 1976 and the very first video game controversy. And we'll officially break out in the arcade. That's it for today, and like I always say, it's 1976. Is Pong Fever over? Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the channel and joining me on my quest to play every single video game in order of release. We'll be streaming live every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Central, so join us and be a Chronologically Gaming influencer, rating the games as we play them. This video wouldn't be possible without Launchbox, RetroArch, and Main. Tell all your friends there's some crazy guy named Chronologically Gaming trying to play every video game. We have links down below that give more information on the games we played this episode, as well as our Discord and Patreon. There's a link called All the Games We Have Played. If you go there, it's a list of everything, and you can click right to the game you want to see. Chronologically Gaming is the name to look for. We are perpetually retro, and we will catch you next time.